One of the CIA's greatest spies, Dmitry Polyakov, is caught by the KGB and strip-searched. His head is held in an arm lock to prevent him taking poison.
The invisible front, that's what it was in the Cold War. And for us it was war. The soldiers may have been on alert, but for us and the others who went out into the cold, it was actual war.
Dawn on the 16th of July, 1945. Allied scientists at Los Alamos leave for the New Mexico desert to watch the test of the first atomic bomb. They have been working for years under a blanket of total secrecy. Ted Hall, at 19, was the youngest scientist on the project.
I was there, or at least I was there in a truck or lorry some distance away. It was considered to be a safe distance away. I can't remember if there was any signal circulated that the test was about to be made, but anyway, the damn thing went off. And it was a rather awesome sight.
For Ted Hall, the Cold War had begun the year before.
I decided to give atomic secrets to the Russians because it seemed to me that it was important that there should be no monopoly which could turn one nation into a menace and turn it loose on the world as Nazi Germany developed. There seemed to be only one answer to what one should do. The right thing to do was to act to break the American monopoly.
Others thought the same way. The KGB had several sources inside Los Alamos, unknown to one another. The scientist Klaus Fuchs and Ted Hall both passed on details of how to detonate nuclear weapons by implosion, a principle so new to Soviet science that there was no equivalent word in Russian. In 1949, the Soviets exploded their first atom bomb. Triggered by implosion, it copied key elements of the American bomb that destroyed Nagasaki. The atom spies had saved the Soviet Union perhaps 2 years of research. Ted Hall was questioned by the FBI in March 1951, but not charged for lack of evidence. A month later, KGB agents Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were sentenced to death. Amid the anti-Soviet fervor of the time, they became the only spies ever executed in peacetime America.
It was gruesome. And it certainly brought home the fact that there were flames consuming people and that we were pretty close to being consumed.
The intelligence war was lopsided. The KGB operated in the West, but the CIA confronted a closed world. Trains crossing the Finnish border into Russia were sealed by steel shutters. The United States faced a long famine of information.
This lack of understanding of how the Soviet system functioned would dog us in CIA throughout the entire Cold War, whether it was the Soviet Union itself or the carbon copies of the Soviet Union in East Germany and in Cuba, and you name it.
Most early infiltration operations into the Soviet Union were doomed from the start. Western agents were betrayed by KGB spies, like the British intelligence officer Kim Philby. Philby came to public attention because of his association with fellow double agents Guy Burgess and Donald MacLean.
Philby, on the right, holds a press conference to deny charges that he was involved in the disappearance of Burgess and MacLean.
Well, if there was a third man, were you in fact the third man?
No, I was not.
Do you think there was one?
No comment.
Well, Mr. Philby, the disappearance of Burgess and MacLean is almost as much of a mystery today as it was when they went away about 4 years ago or more. Can you shed any light on it at all?
No, I can't.
Philby много сообщал.
Philby told us a lot about those missions.
Он, во-первых, указывал количество людей.
He told us about the numbers of people. He told us about the coordinates, where and how the operations would be carried out, whether they would be parachuted in or sent in by sea. Those areas were, of course, surrounded by Soviet counterintelligence, and they were caught. The normal routine was that the agents were interrogated. Some were very hostile and kept silent. In doing so, they signed their own death warrants.
In 1953, Soviet émigré Mikhail Kudryavtsev parachuted into Russia to spy for the CIA.
After we were dropped in, we were tied up and taken off to the KGB. When the investigator from Moscow arrived, and he arrived suspiciously quickly by nightfall, I got the impression that they had been waiting for us, that somehow the KGB knew we were coming.
Kudryavtsev saved his life by telling the KGB everything and agreeing to parrot a prepared statement at this heavily stage-managed press conference.
This is me. Before we spoke at that conference, we were given scripts that we had 2 days to learn by heart.
Kudryavtsev told the world of his great error in ever thinking ill of the Soviet Union, let alone trying to topple it.
It was hard for me to say those things. Very hard. But I had to do it, in order not to be taken back to the Lubyanka.
You begin to believe that this was a service that really had enormous coverage and that everything we did, not a sparrow could fall without this enormous KGB finding out about it. Because in terms of our own individual experiences, we knew that the operations we were involved in had been betrayed by people like Kim Philby.
The KGB put vast arrays of captured CIA equipment on show. The West had suffered failure abroad and betrayal at home. It was back to the drawing board. The Korean War provided further blows to the CIA's self-confidence, highlighting gaps in forecasting and assessment.
The CIA was wrong about the start of the war. They were wrong about the Chinese involvement and intervention in the war, and they were wrong about the capabilities of the North Korean forces. I think the Korean War, in terms of its intelligence failures, left a lot of lessons for the policy community and the intelligence community. And one of those lessons was that, indeed, we would have to get better technical intelligence and make more of a commitment to signals intelligence and communications intelligence. And with this, you get resources put with the National Security Agency under the Pentagon in order to develop capability to intercept messages around the world. And this produced extremely and vital information to the intelligence community.
Berlin was a communications hub where countless Soviet bloc phone and teleprinter lines crisscrossed beneath the city. To intercept them, the Americans and British drove a tunnel deep into the Soviet sector.
The purpose of the Berlin Tunnel was to tap the communications lines of the Soviet forces in East Germany, in Poland, and their links with Moscow, in order to provide current intelligence on those forces and also early warning. The lines from the taps would come down into the tunnel itself, and first they would be amplified, because then we had to run the lines up into the area of the warehouse where we had hundreds and hundreds of recorders that operated day and night and recorded every single bit of this stuff.
From the start, this operation was betrayed to the KGB by a source inside British intelligence, George Blake.
I was secretary at the meeting at which this tunnel was being planned. And so I was able to draw a very simple sketch which showed how the tunnel was going to run and what cables it was intended to attack.
Blake had served as a British intelligence officer in Seoul